Hi! I recorded this video to show you how I paint the Scottish Highlands in my sketchbook. These scenes are from last year's holiday. I spent a couple of weeks in Scotland during late July and the start of August. I will tell you a bit more about my painting process and the inspiration behind these scenes in a minute. First, let me show you my art supplies. The sketchbook is by Clairefontaine Paint On. It's a mixed media sketchbook with sandy shade paper. It's one of my favorites. I adore the look of it and I like how highlights stand out on this paper. My Gouache art set is from Gouache. I've been using this set for a year or so. The paint has great quality and stays in a pretty good condition. Sometimes I also use Gouache paint by other brands such as Winsor & Newton or Royal Talens. Having olive green paint nearby is a must for me. I use a pocket palette by Etcher and a simple one that I bought for a couple of euros in an art store. When I will start painting, I will tell you a bit more about these palettes. I already started sketching. I mainly sketch to know where to put each element, in this case the house, and to know where my sky ends and the landscape begins. I mainly use a mechanical pencil for this since it helps me define the outlines. I've put in the reference photo as well so you have a better idea of how I'm translating the picture to the page. I took two of these pictures outside a train window. It was close to Fort William. I traveled there from Pitlochry, a Scottish town. I took the photograph with the rainbow from the building I stayed at while being in Fort William, and the fourth one was taken during a short hike close to the Glencoe Visitor Centre. I already finished my sketches, so it's time to start with the first paint layer. I use various paintbrushes. I will link them in the description of this video. Make sure you use at least one round and flat brush and you have a small one for specific details. What I usually do when painting is keeping my reference photos nearby and trying to pick the right shades. I blend them on the paper and sometimes I use my finger to blend it together nicely. Using various shades of green is a great trick and works especially well when you're painting mountains. Don't try to cramp in every tiny detail you see on the picture. Try to focus on the bigger picture. You can always add more details in the end. I always like to combine it with some yellow ochre and brown umber shades as well and slightly blend it into the mixture of paint. As you can see, I already used some grayish and black paint for the mountains above. To add highlights, I'm adding some white paint in the work as well. Since the paint hasn't dried yet, I slightly blend it with my finger to mix it together with the other colors. My paintbrushes are from all kinds of brands. I use Pro Art polar brushes, but I also own brushes from the brand Himi, Ohuhu, Etcher and Talens. I can work quite quickly with gouache because it dries fast. That allows me to build up layers in a short amount of time. While gouache does reactivate when water is added, on a page like this I can still work efficiently because I use very little water. You can see that in the opacity of the colors. The paint remains rich and opaque rather than becoming transparent. In the meantime, I moved on to the second landscape I'm working on today. I started with various shades of blue and white for the sky. Earlier, I mentioned that I would share a bit more about the paint palettes I use. This is the Etcher Pocket Palette, and I find it incredibly convenient because you can simply close it up and take it anywhere with you. Since the palette stays sealed, the paint remains workable for quite a long time. I also tend to return to the same colors throughout my sketchbook spreads, so I usually carry the same palette with me wherever I go. Because gouache can be reactivated with water, I rarely clean out my palettes. Instead, I keep reusing the same colors over and over again. Before I start painting, I simply give the paints a quick mist with a water spray bottle and they're ready to use. One of the things I really enjoy about gouache is how versatile it is. You can experiment with different amounts of water to achieve very different effects. When you add more water, the paint behaves more like watercolor, creating softer, more transparent washes. With less water and more pigment, the paint becomes much more opaque and can even resemble acrylic paint. In fact, gouache is often described as an opaque watercolor, which is a pretty accurate way to think about it. For this painting, I made the mountain in the background a little lighter. Since the mountains overlap slightly, the difference in value helps separate the layers and gives the scene more dimension. After that, I simply keep looking back and forth between the reference photo and my sketchbook, trying to recreate the scene as closely as possible while making small adjustments along the way. I find it helpful to work from the top to the bottom. I do occasionally jump between different areas, but this approach helps me avoid smudging wet paint. It also means I'm less likely to get paint on my hand or leave unwanted marks on the sketchbook page. Sometimes that still happens, but I also like to think that it's the charm of keeping a travel sketchbook. Visiting Scotland has been a while for me now, but since I'm still working on some paintings, I do still look back on it quite often. Because I get to capture these beautiful places with paint, I get to linger and hold on to them for a longer time. For me, it's definitely a way to cherish and celebrate these wonderful views. Even though I'm not standing in front of these mountains anymore and the wind and sometimes stormy weather doesn't blow me away, in my mind, I'm still there. For me, it's the best way to experience an afterglow after a vacation, as if, in a way, you've never really left the place. I do think you can feel that magic in some places, and I feel it very strongly in the UK. I've experienced it in the north of England when I was visiting places such as Whitby, States, and Robin Hood's Bay, but I also experienced it in Scotland. And while seeing me painting this and seeing other Scotland clips, you might rediscover some of the magic I found while staying here. It's sort of a belonging, something like a puzzle falling into place, saying something along the lines of, this is a place you feel right at home. So yeah, I would definitely like to return someday, and in the meantime, I will try to rediscover some of that magic in me painting my reference photos. I'm writing down a description of the landscapes with a black fine liner. This one is by Artline, its nib size is 1 and it's a calligraphy pen. I bought it in a bookstore in Fort William. It's a nice pen, it's also water resistant. I always like to at least include the dates so I won't be able to forget. I just show you my sketchbook scan of the progress I've made so far, so that means the first paint layer is done. I will now continue painting and start blocking in more shapes and shadows, and I will already start painting trees and bushes as I go. In the meantime, it started raining, so perhaps that's what you will hear as background noise. My original reference photo didn't have a house included in this landscape, but I did like to include it, so I decided going for it anyway. There's this wee white house that you will often see in the background of pictures people take in the Highlands, so maybe this is my take on that little white house. The white path in front of the winding river is supposed to be a road. I've said it before in another video and I will probably repeat this again, but what helps me while painting is to think in layers. Just gradually build up the painting by adding different elements on top of each other and don't stress too much about the process. And if something goes wrong, you can always dab away the excessive paint with a sponge or a tissue and repaint it again by painting a new layer on top of it. You can't really go wrong with doing this. And also, don't be scared to mix paints with each other. For example, a bit of olive green with yellow and red, and some grey and black on top of the green mixture, the way you saw me painting just now. Overall, with gouache paint, it works well to add light paint on top of dark paint, but it depends a bit on how you want your composition to look. I'm currently painting some wooden pillars in the grass. I do this with a small brush because it's easier to work with a fine tip for its details. I've also painted some dark purple flowers in the foreground, and I alternate between some dark and light grass blades. You can make the painting more playful by painting these grass blades a little bit outside of the scene, the way I did here in the corners, and by letting them flow in various directions. I included some in the back of the landscape as well. And while letting that dry, I move on to the house on the first landscape on the right page. To finish the foreground, I use a small brush and a mixture of olive green and white to paint individual grass blades. Apply only light pressure and gently press the brush onto the paper. This creates soft, delicate strokes that blend nicely into the landscape. This might be a little late to tell you, but make sure to refresh your paint water once in a while. While painting landscapes, it's often okay for muddy colors to coexist next to each other, but you want to avoid having some of the green paint into your skies. Now it's time for the finishing touches. Here I'm drawing in a fence. I mostly work with a small detail brush, adding highlights and shadows wherever the painting needs a little more definition. I also like to use colored pencils at this stage. They add texture and make it easier to create certain details that can be tricky to paint. Before I call the painting finished, I always take a moment to look over the wall piece and repaint or refine anything that doesn't feel quite right yet. For example, I paint some more clouds. And of course, I couldn't leave out the rainbow. I'm using my Faber-Castell Polychromos colored pencils. I wasn't sure at first whether I wanted to paint the rainbow or draw it, but in the end I chose colored pencils because they allow me to work with finer details. I'm also using a colored pencil set by Whiff. They kindly sent it to me a few months ago to try out. The set includes a single pencil holder and a range of colored leads, which makes it incredibly convenient to carry lots of colors without taking up much space. As you can see, it's quite easy to switch from one lead to another. You do have to be a little careful as the leads can break quite easily, but overall I really enjoyed using this drawing set. It's lightweight, compact and perfect for sketching and drawing while traveling. Once the colors are in place, I will soften them a little with a white pencil. I also use a blending stub and sometimes even my finger to gently blend the colors together. And as a last step, I let it fade even more by using a paintbrush and a small amount of water and white paint. In this way you create a soft, more faded look. I continue working with colored pencils to add a few more grass blades and deepen some of the shadows throughout the landscape. To finish the scene, I'm using a white fineliner and a touch of white paint to add a small plume of smoke rising from the chimney. It's a tiny detail, but it adds a little extra life and atmosphere to the painting. Coming across views like these while traveling through Scotland is something I will never forget. I hope these sketchbook paintings has allowed me to share at least a small part of the joy and admiration I felt while exploring this beautiful country. Scotland is an incredible place to visit, with breathtaking landscapes around every corner, and I hope you will get the chance to experience its beauty for yourself one day. I'm also hoping to create a collection of postcards and a small booklet featuring my Scotland illustrations in the future. If that sounds like something you would be interested in, make sure to keep an eye on my account for updates. I regularly post on Instagram as well. My account name is Merel Journals. One of my favorite finishing touches is adding a bit of yellow ochre colored pencil over parts of the paintings. I apply it very lightly, just enough to introduce some extra warmth and create a more cohesive look. This is the final scan of these illustrations. I will now put my art supplies away and show you some details of my sketchbook paintings of Scotland, of the Highlands. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will talk to you in the next video. Bye bye!